Hi everyone, welcome to the first part of your ARP. Okay, so thanks for doing this. All right, now we're going to look at this handout that I've given you, the revised one, where I added in more things for you. Okay, in class we have already talked about land use planning. Okay, and I've already printed out for you what we have discussed, why it is effective, why it is not effective also in some cases. Okay, and I've given you examples here. You go on to page 4, hazard resistant design. We have talked about why is it effective, but we've not talked about why is it not effective. If you go on to page 6, okay, monitoring and warning systems, we talk about why is it effective, but haven't talked about why is it not effective. And lastly, the increasing preparedness. Okay, the non-effective part is not done. All right. Now, this is what I want you to do. In the Google Classroom, I give you a link to a Google form. Okay, this is what you all have done this week. And this is some of the explanation you have done for the different measures. So land use planning, we are done already. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get you a few minutes to get ideas from your classmates. Okay, hazard resistant building design, why is it not effective? Okay, and then for monitoring warning system, why is it not effective? Okay, and note down some of your key ideas before I go through them with you. Okay, so pause this video, and for the next 5 minutes, quickly look through, get some ideas, jot down your points, then I will go through that with you as you continue the video.
A few moments later, a few minutes later, one eternity later.
Assume you have finished looking through and gotten some ideas. All right, so let's take a look at why is it not so effective. Okay, so first one, hazard resistant designs. We're looking at page 4. Okay, why is it not so effective? Well, to implement this, you need a lot of resources. Okay, you need a lot of resources, you need a lot of financial resources to build all these measures, you need a lot of technical expertise to be able to build these things, to know how to build these things and manage these things. Okay, so the main problem is that communities, especially LDCs, are less able to afford it. So if they're not able to afford it, then it's most likely that the buildings continue to be damaged, easily damaged. Okay, and when it's easily damaged, all right, what happens is that it will continue to be vulnerable to disasters, okay, when the hazard strikes, and as a result, you still lead to a lot of damages and deaths. Okay, so damages and deaths means that there's a lot of disasters, this high disaster risk. Okay, so it always goes back to this issue fundamentally. All right, now some of you have talked about how the designs may not be effective. Okay, true, but these days, majority of the time, the designs are quite effective. Okay, now some of you talked about how you cannot implement in older designs. No, I've mentioned in the details over here that you can actually retrofit older designs. All right, now let me quickly show you examples of it. These are models of earthquake resistant design. Okay? One over here, there's some form of base isolation. This is actually not a very effective base isolator. The real base isolators are much better. Okay, the one in front here, you can't really see it. All right, let me maybe change a different screen. Okay, the one in front here is a normal building design. There's pillars, there's beams, okay? And then the one behind is cross braces that you can see in the photo, in your notes. Okay, so when there's earthquake, let's see how it shakes. All right, you see which one shakes more. Okay, so you can see the first one, the typical design, it shakes a lot. And in real life, they're not going to shake so much. Okay, in real life, after it bends so much, it was just going to collapse. Okay, now the cross braces, you can see they keep its shape, it hardly shakes. And the base isolator, it shakes a lot lesser than the one in front. Okay, so let's take a look again. Okay, but actual base isolators are much more stable than these. I'll find a better example next time. Okay, so so the cross bracing is one way they can quickly add on to older buildings to make it hazard resistant. Okay, here's another way they do it. They add this cross brace and then a thicker wall over here to secure it, and you can see what happens to it. Okay, you can see that it shakes a lot lesser than just now, right? Okay, so earthquake resistant building is mostly effective these days already. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Next one. All right, next one. Okay, monitoring and warning systems. I asked why is it not effective. Okay, a lot of you say that there's not much time to run away or things like that. Okay, or the whole country is in the earthquake zone. Okay, in fact, some of you mentioned that People don't trust the warning system. Okay, so these are possible reasons. Okay, which we can talk about definitely. But let's focus on what you can work on. Okay, so what you can work on, and most of the time, the reasons why people are not implementing this properly all goes back to the same story of there's a lot of financial and technical resources needed. Okay, so as a result, it cannot be implemented properly for some places. Okay, some places are unable to implement it properly. So as a result, it doesn't work, or they can't even implement such systems at all. Okay, and then what does it lead to? It leads to system not working, unable to send out the warning, and then people continue to be vulnerable to all the disasters risk. Okay, one of the articles and resources that I shared with you all for this case was in Indonesia. In 2018, there was an earthquake and tsunami. Despite having a warning and monitoring system, no warnings were sent out, sadly. Okay, and then what happened was it turns out that the monitoring system have actually spoiled, and yet excuse me, the monitoring system has spoiled, and yet they don't, because and what happens is that they do not have the resources to maintain it. So that's why they were not able to detect the tsunami and give the necessary warning. Okay, then of course I was seeing another article about, I forgot which LDC. The telephone lines were spoiled. There were no resources to maintain the telephone line. So when the monitoring agencies saw that an earthquake is coming, they couldn't inform anyone. The telephone line was spoiled. Okay. So as a result, because of all the deaths, it's hard to recover, and that of course makes it less sustainable. So all these points are repeating. It's the same idea. You can deviate definitely to talk about the same ideas, but this is just one example. Okay, so whatever I've shown here is not the limit, but these are just some talking points that you can start with. Okay. Excuse me. All right, I'll move on. Okay, so these are some of the systems that they use lah. All right, volcano warning is a bit lesser because it's harder to tell when volcanoes will erupt. In fact, Mount St. Helens, they saw signs, but they couldn't tell. Okay, and in fact, one of their volcanologists who monitored Mount St. Helens died because he was just on duty to be here to monitor Mount St. Helens. There were signs that it's going to erupt, but they couldn't really tell when. Okay, and then what happened was that when he was on duty, it erupted, and then he was killed by the pyroclastic flow. Okay, there's only a few successful cases like Mount Pinatubo. They only managed to evacuate. It happened that they evacuate just a few days before the eruption. Okay, but if they evacuate too early, people will not be happy. Say, why you evacuate for 1 month, then the volcano is not erupting. All right, so the volcano eruption warning system is a bit more tricky because you are trying to predict when it happens. Whereas earthquake and tsunami, both events happen already. Then they tell people that, hey, you need to run away now. All right. Okay, last one, increasing preparedness. Okay, what is it about? Didn't give you a thing to do. So increasing preparedness is basically you prepare the public. All right, they have to prepare for them to respond and recover, which are these two measures is what we talked about in disaster management. Okay, like search and rescue, like rebuilding, like providing psychosocial services and things like that. Okay, so two main things you need to do. First, you must educate the public. You must train them what are the hazards that they are living near, how to administer first aid, how to evacuate, what are the drills. Okay, and then of course you must prepare plans also. Okay, government and communities must work together. Next lesson, I will show you some readings. What happens when governments or foreign agencies don't work with the communities? Okay, so they must also have plans so that when disasters happen, they know what to do, and they also install the necessary infrastructure. Okay, so when they are well prepared, they can respond quickly and effectively, efficiently. They don't waste time panicking and screaming around. That's why you can reduce death and injury. And when you have resources, you can implement it quickly and reduce death and injury. Okay, but what happens with the reverse if you never prepare? Or why is it that some countries are unable to prepare? Same issue. There's a lot of financial and technical resources needed. Okay, so because I cannot afford such measures, I cannot train properly, then what happened in the end? I cannot train, they don't know what to do. Okay, they don't know what to do, they cannot protect themselves in a timely manner, and there's continue to be a lot of deaths. All right. Another possible reason is that there's insufficient resources. Maybe I want to do it, but I have no resources to, let's say, prepare emergency food supply, emergency medical supply to give out when there's a disaster. Okay, so they do not have the resources. They cannot plan it. Then also nothing can be done. They cannot really be recovering and responding effectively, which is why it continues to have a lot of deaths. Okay, and then it continues to be less sustainable and less resilient. Okay, so looking at these 4 measures, let's summarize together. Okay, so these are pictures that you can look at, all right, of how different ways different countries have tried to respond and prepare for disasters. Okay, so in conclusion, we have looked at, this is the whole topic 3 more or less. Okay, we have previously looked at how do we respond to disaster. After we respond, we recover. In the process of recovering and rebuilding, we also prepare for the next one. Okay, so for example, providing resources and preventing plans and educating the public to respond and recover quickly. We also build the warning systems to evacuate during responses. Okay, we also rebuild hazard-resistant buildings over here. Okay, so it's like a cycle, continuous cycle that's happening. All right, now you have learned that community resilience is about the community being able to, in a timely and effective manner, resist the impact, adapt the impact, respond and recover from the impact of disasters. Which will you put them? Okay, next, which measures attempts for disaster risk management, which measures attempt to reduce exposure or vulnerability. Okay, can I give you a pause for a few minutes, and then you go and fill this up before you unpause. Okay, fill this up now for community resilience and exposure versus vulnerability.
A few moments later, a few minutes later, 1 eternity later.
Okay, I assume you have done. All right, so community resilience, resist impact. How do we resist impact? Okay, we resist impact by preparing beforehand and adapt. Okay, so this how, for example, we adapt by building hazard-resistant buildings. Okay, we resist by building structures. Okay, and we prepare ourselves to be able to minimize the effects of it. Okay, respond and recover, I think it's quite straightforward. Respond and recover goes to the responses and the recovery one as well. Okay, and then of course recovery, there's some form of adaptation because you're trying to recover back using ways that will help you resist the disaster risk mentioned next time. So you adapt a bit here to go on to here. Okay, how about exposure and vulnerability? Which of these is about reducing exposure? Which of these is about reducing vulnerability? Okay, so land use planning is to reduce exposure, right? So that less people are exposed to the disaster. They are not in the places that is exposed to the disaster, high risk of disaster. Okay, hazard resistant, you're trying to get people more prepared and more protected. That is about reducing vulnerability. Warning and monitoring systems is about reducing vulnerability because they are still exposed. It's just that only at the time when the disaster is going to happen, you warn them. Okay? Then likewise, increasing community preparedness is also vulnerability. Okay? So you see the other is land use planning. Why is it that the rest only reduce vulnerability? Why not reduce exposure? Well, as we mentioned in land use planning, it's not easy to get people to move. Okay? It's not easy to get people to move out of hazardous places. Okay? So most of the time, they actually try to respond by reducing vulnerability. Okay? So, which are the 2 common reasons why community resilience are limited? I want you to go and filter out yourself, and I'll talk about next lesson. These 2, you can do it now. If not, we can save it for next time as part of revision. Okay? But I'm more than happy to hear your point of view, which do you think is the most important. So for disaster risk management among here, which do you think is the most important? That is for question 4. Question 5 will be all 3 steps: prepare, respond, recover. Among these 3 steps, which do you think is the most important and why? Okay? If you're not sure what are the possible logic to use, I'll give you a hint. In the next part of the lesson, we are going to talk about essay, and in essay, we're going to talk about how do we evaluate different factors. All right? So I hope you better understand the different measures that we do to build community resilience to manage disaster risk. Okay, and with that, we have more or less finished this topic of tectonics.